I don't get why people are mad at Brock Lesnar because of his WWE deal. Who would turn that down? If you go to work and your boss says, "We need you so much we're willing to pay you more and you can work less," are you going to say no? Of course you're not, and if you would, I don't know what's wrong with you. That's the dream deal. It's something Chris Jericho agreed with recently during an interview, but also it's nothing new for pro wrestling. Long before the Beast was besting Vince McMahon at the negotiation table, performers up and down the country were asking for perks that seemed crazy when said out loud, but that companies agreed to without a second's thought. When your back is against the wall and you think you need someone, you'll do whatever the hell you can. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is the 10 most insane demands wrestlers have ever made. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, dong. Number 10, the Kiss Demon demands the main event. No one knows, even today, why someone in WCW decided the way to save the promotion when things were headed in the wrong direction was to get in Kiss. Now, I love Kiss, they're a great band, and if you've ever seen them live, you know they kick ass, even today. But anyone with a brain could tell this was a waste of money. That's probably why World Championship Wrestling did it, though. And sure, this was meant to be a cross-promotion deal, but again, what? If someone tries to sell me WCW when I'm watching Gene Simmons pretend to eat his bass guitar, I'm not going to care. The worst result of all of this was the creation of the Kiss Demon, a wrestling character based on the foursome. Now that probably would have been okay, but then management agreed to Kiss's demands that this person would have at least one main event in 1999 or 2000. Who signed off on that? Even Ted Turner's goons knew this was a mistake and instead booked the Demon against the Wall at Super Bowl 2000 and just dubbed it as a special main event. Hilariously, the Wall won, and soon after this partnership died. As did WCW, you can see why. Number 9, RALPHUS wants a real contract. Sometimes life surprises you, and when it does, it's best to just enjoy it and see where it leads. Getting an ego or thinking too highly of yourself never works out. Ever. According to Chris Jericho himself on a podcast, his former security guard, who originally was a trucker that Y2J had spied from afar, believed so much in his character that he went to WCW officials and asked to be signed as an actual talent. He even started turning up at house shows seeing if he was needed, and if not, insinuating that he should be used. Given this was World Championship Wrestling, he got a contract. Paid around $75,000 a year, he also wanted $750 every time he did an outside appearance and expected WCW to get him 2 a week. Did anyone actually go out to get a signed RALPHUS 8x10 in the late 90s? If so, in the comments below, please. Number 8, Jerry Lawler's confusing characterization. When the King signed himself a WWE contract in 1993, everyone assumed he would be exclusive to the brand. Because of course, that's been the company's remit from day one, so why would it be different now? Well, it was. Jerry was adamant that he could keep working in the Memphis territory where he made his name, and WWE was fine with it, mostly as the USWA was a feeder system for Vince McMahon at the time, so it wasn't much of a problem. What was is the fact that Lawler was a heel in New York, but a face down here. That was weird anyway, but it got even weirder when the likes of Bret Hart and Vince himself, who at the time was just a friendly commentator, did an appearance for the USWA and got booed out of the place because in Memphis, Jerry is the king. Naturally. If you were a random fan in the crowd, you must have been baffled by this, as the idea of characterization and story were just thrown out the window in favour of whatever madness this was. Number 7, Ryback wants equal pay. This one would actually be quite nice. If you knew no matter where you were on the card you were guaranteed an equal share of the pie, you're going to feel pretty good about life. Unfortunately, that's not how life works, especially when it comes to the world of entertainment. Ryback felt differently and told Vince McMahon this during a meeting in 2016. Taking what pro wrestling has always been and saying it was rubbish, the big guy said to the boss that everyone on the card should be paid the same, regardless whether they won or whether they lost. In Ryback's mind, it took 2 to tango, so why should there be any kind of gap? And surprisingly, Vince didn't see this the same way, and before long, the man who wanted to be fed had left the company. McMahon should have offered to pay him in food, probably would have worked, as he was clearly just hungry. Number 6, Randy Savage keeps it in the family. The Macho Man was a major get for WCW in the mid-90s. He was still a huge name in pro wrestling and fans were willing to follow him wherever he went. Savage too was keen to make the jump after having his in-ring career cut short by the WWE when they stuck him on commentary because they thought his best years were behind him. So when World Championship Wrestling came a-calling, Randy was more than happy to say yes, but he had one specific demand. WCW had to hire his brother Lanny Poffo too. That takes some balls. If you need any proof that Eric Bischoff only agreed to this to get Savage through the door, Lanny never did anything with the company and mostly sat at home collecting a paycheck. That wasn't on him either. He wanted to work, but WCW had no interest or clearly a clue about how not to hemorrhage money. Number 5, Hulk Hogan's elaborate WCW deal. If you want a good read, go and check out Hulk Hogan's WCW contract. It shows just how important the Hulkster was to Ted Turner because they were willing to bend over backwards to give him whatever he wanted. Let's look at the best bits. For starters, he was given a $2 million bonus for signing an extension to his current deal. Think of that. He was handed some extra cash just because he was going to hang around. Then there was a 25% agreement giving him a quarter of the ticket gross for Nitro, Thunder or live events, 15% of the revenue from pay-per-view events he worked, and a nifty $20,000 just for wearing NWO branded merchandise on TV. If you're trying to figure out what all this means, it means Hogan is the master of getting amazing pro wrestling deals. There's more as well. The contract stipulated that Hulk would have approval over the outcome of all wrestling matches in where he appears, or in other words, he had complete creative control over what he did. He also earned bucket loads of cash and was still able to make personal appearances outside of WCW's time. Who else wants that deal? Exactly. Number 4, the Favored Nations Clause. Hogan wasn't the only one who saw that tapping into WCW's bank balance was an enjoyable thing to do, as Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were up to it as well when they jumped across in the summer of '96. The best part of their deal, other than less dates and more money, was that they had a Favored Nation Clause included in their contract, which basically meant no one could earn a higher base salary than they did. The key word there is base salary, because it meant Hulk Hogan could still earn more from bonuses and what have you, but still, if you were coming into WCW with the outsiders, you were never going to earn more than them. And if you did, Hall and Nash would get a bump too. Given that WWE wasn't doing anything like this at all, and the pair must have thought they'd landed on cloud 9. Someone was willing to just increase their bank balances simply because they asked. It worked, of course, or at least it did for a little while, but it really is quite the ask and proves it's always worth posing the question. Number 3, the Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam 91. At the biggest event of the summer in 1991, the Ultimate Warrior decided to hold Vince McMahon to ransom. While he was ready to co-headline the show alongside Hulk Hogan, the Warrior also decided he deserved some extra goodness if he was going to turn up for work. So what did he ask for? Well, he demanded $550,000 given that he performed at WrestleMania 7, wanted to do less dates, and fancied getting his hands on some of that lovely WWE merchandise cash. Oh, and he also pulled a Ryback and wanted hotels and travel paid for by the company. The best part of all of this is that the real-life Jim Hellwig asked for all this in a letter, which is quite polite, but also weird. I don't think he had thought about the problem with that dreaded paper trail though. With little choice but to agree, McMahon said this was fine, but after SummerSlam was over, he suspended the Ultimate One for threatening to stay at home. That line allowed WWE to get out of any deal while the boss described these demands as ridiculous. Probably because they were. Number 2, Brock Lesnar's wellness policy exclusion. Around 1 week after he defeated Mark Hunt at UFC 200 on the 9th of July 2016, news began circulating that Brock Lesnar had failed a drugs test. USADA had found traces of the drug during both out-of-competition and in-competition tests, and he was later suspended by the UFC. WWE, meanwhile, still had Lesnar headlining SummerSlam against Randy Orton, and that just carried on as normal. As it turned out, the promotion's own wellness policy was revealed to only apply to full-time performers. As Lesnar was part-time, he was exempt from testing. You can only imagine how well that went down with the MMA community and the sports world as a whole. It does seem a little strange that Brock may have that kind of loophole written into his WWE contract to begin with, especially given what the policy is meant to achieve. It's an odd situation, no doubt, and if you raise an eyebrow over it, well, you're not alone. Number 1, Bret Hart won't lose to Shawn Michaels. This is a hard one. On paper, and given what wrestling is, this does sound ridiculous. Winning and losing is what it's all about when you break it right down, so if someone says nope, you screw up the whole system. So when Bret Hart left the WWE covered in controversy in 1997 and all this spilled out, the wrestling world had a bunch of questions as to what the hell happened. With all that said, there was a lot of other aspects going on here that made the situation just a hotbed for craziness. For one, HBK had directly told the Hitman he would never do the favors for him, and on top of that, Bret had creative control over the way he left the company. No one was going to be able to come out of this well, and that's exactly what happened. It was a mess. Everyone will have their own opinions today, and as we know, the Montreal screwjob has been done to death. But hey, it is what it is, and will always stand tall as what not to do if you're involved in pro wrestling on either side.